The ANC's National Executive Committee is sitting for first time since the May polls, and the party is taking stock of ongoing developments and plans for the 7th administration while reflecting on its election performance. Now, briefing the media on some of the discussions at the meetings, the Government of National Unity was a big talking point. Let's get some perspective with political analyst Professor Sethulego Matebesi. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on Newzroom Afrika, Prof.
Good morning, Master Chab and the viewers.
Firstly, there is an agenda set by the NEC, and of course we know that that includes the election performance, GNU, national dialogue, and obviously regaining the trust of South Africans. But according to you, Prof, what do you think the ANC's NEC meeting should be focusing on?
It's going to be a very difficult one if you are sitting at the leadership echelons of the African National Congress. It is internal strife. We've already seen some pronouncements by its alliance partners, the African Communist Party, by COSATU also actually indicating their displeasure. Now, it is for the African National Congress, and I really like what their communication team led by the Secretary General have done to say there's absolutely no doubt. South Africans know, and we all know, that is the harsh reality of the outcome of the recent elections that we have in South Africa, that the ANC did not have an outright majority. And I don't think the ANC had a plan. How are they going to deal with such an eventuality? Because the plan was from the beginning to win the elections. And I strongly believe that they were struck by the harsh realities of our political landscape. And it's going to be very difficult even going forward. But for me, it's to be transparent, and it's to acknowledge that this is really a completely different scenario that needs everyone to pull in the right direction. And that's exactly what the ANC is trying to do.
Yeah, the seemingly lack of preparedness for this eventuality, as you mentioned, Professor, has really cost them the confidence of South Africans. What message do you think the ANC needs to convey to the public to regain their trust and support?
Well, one, I've already seen or heard some muted signs of the kind of message that the African National Congress wants to communicate with South Africans and with their own members, and that is a message of, almost like confidence to say that the ANC will wrestle itself out of this, what I will call a very murky situation, but it will take, I don't know what, effort, visionary leaderships, and whether that will happen within the next five years, it's going to be a tall order. But I think that is the message that the ANC should and must actually, not should, must actually communicate with its own members and South Africans to say that we have learned our lessons and we are going to do X, Y, Z to be able to enable to win over electoral support. But as I've indicated, it seems as, I don't know whether the winds of change are blowing already in South Africa, South African political landscape, or is it the case that the ANC can have the so-called, reconfiguration or a dramatic comeback during the next provincial and national elections?
Well, right now, the reality also, Prof, is that they've had to learn how to play with other kids, essentially. So yesterday, the Deputy Secretary of the ANC, Menomvula Mokonyane, responded on Helen Zilla's remarks about the GNU and said her party cannot afford to be as reckless as the Democratic Alliance leader Helen Zilla, urging her to behave more like the visitor that she is within the GNU. Now, do you think there's a problem in the GNU between the ANC and the DA?
Yeah, well, it's clear signs, and look, South Africans should not be naive. From time to time, these events or issues will come up where there is difference in all that, and we've got some strong-willed politicians where sometimes I strongly believe some of them are very reckless because I don't think they don't know what are the consequences of some of these pronouncements that I want to make. But we should also remember this is a political game and you want to trash your enemy at every single little turn. But is that good for us? No, definitely not. Is these kind of pronouncements and statements that gives us an indication that things are not going well. And look, things don't have to go well because there will be differences. But there are those, brutal statements that I just think that goes on. It's an antithesis to what the GNU wants to build. And it's good also for the ANC to take a stance on this because it may also seem that they are being pulled by the nose by some of these their partners in the so-called GNU, and we all know the character of Mayor Helen Zille when he made these kind of pronouncements. She's not pulling back. But sometimes one have to ask ourselves, is it within the decorum of what they have agreed on? That is something that only the viewers can decide.
Now, SG Fikile Balula has also said that they are not approaching this relationship with cap in hand. So, you know, according to you, in your thoughts, as much as the ANC says that they do not need the DA, they could continue successfully with the GNU without the DA. What are your thoughts on this?
No, well, it's something that the African National Congress can state at this stage. I don't think they would have made such pronouncements before and this GNU were formed because they know that the DA is the majority partner, you know, I mean, is the second best supported party. And the question is if they have to be voting at the National Assembly, what's going to happen? Because all these other parties, if you look at their votes together, will they be able to muster enough vote to be able for those the decisions to sway in favor of the African National Congress. And what is also going to happen in our provinces. So these are some of the things. But I strongly believe that the ANC have also taken the right stance because clearly they need to demonstrate leadership. And along the way, there would have been an expectation that they take a stance because in the past it seems as if they were still treading very cautiously or navigating very cautiously around some of the issues that related to the government of national unity. But they now have that luxury to make this kind of pronouncement. But I think it's going to be very difficult without a democratic alliance.
And still on the GNU, Prof, do you think parties such as the PA and IFP are still committed to the GNU, or are there signs of dissatisfaction?
No, what I like, I mean, the IFP and all the other parties, even with the PA, we've seen some of the pronouncement made by their leader, but I think it is for the good. They are a bit, level-headed leaders where even when they make some of these parties like the IFP, when they've got these media briefings, you can see almost like there's tremendous pressure, and you can see it through, even when their leaders are speaking and addressing the nation, that they really want this to succeed. And it is these parties behind the scenes that will ensure that even if there is discomfort between the African National Congress and the Democratic Alliance, they will play that role to try and rein these leaders in to ensure that they do reach their goal. And the goal is to ensure that at the end of the day, they exercise the mandate that they've been given by the South African electorate.
All right, Prof. Now, are there any specific policy areas where you think that the ANC needs to take a stronger stance or make significant changes?
No, for me, the time of formulating policies is over. We do have the best policies in the world. I mean, for me, it's a tit for tat. There had to be consequences for malpractices like corruption. I mean, South Africans are living under constant fear. I mean, when the sun sets in South Africa, there's a possibility that somebody may lose his or her life. That is unacceptable. What happened? Why can't we fight crime? There had to be consequences against our leaders. We're supposed to ensure that we fight crime, corruption, and all that. So we do have the policies. For me, it's about implementation, and we have already seen glimpse of action towards that, the pressure that these leaders from opposition parties have brought on some of our departments. Some of the things that have happened over the past couple of weeks, it's some of the things that has been unheard of, where a list of, or whether that is now ethical or not, people who are getting funded and all that, that has been shared with the public. It's things like that where we need to take South Africans into confidence, and also the African, and I'm going to once again lay my head on the block here. The ANC does have capable leaders, but there are rock elements within the party that compromises this glorious organization. And the ANC needs to honestly deal with those. And I think that will be a starting point. And this whole notion that the ANC is led by corrupt, not everyone is corrupt. And it's not only an issue of the ANC. I mean, all other political parties are looking at their own personal interests. But for me, the time of formulating policies, coming up with strategies, commissions, has long been over, because at one stage we had more than 200 commissions, and at the end of the day, implementation still lags behind. So what we should preach in South Africa is action, action, and action.
All right, Prof, in closing, you speak of leadership. Let's talk about the role of President Ramaphosa in managing conflict within the NEC. Is his leadership style effective in resolving disputes?
Yeah, well, he has been blamed, but I think his leadership style came through now. For the very first time, I've seen a president that could confront almost like a personal onslaught. We've seen how he responded to Julius Malema, and I strongly believe that some of his leadership qualities actually came to the fore during these negotiations around the government of national unity. Before President Ramaphosa took over, some of us already predicted he's inheriting an ANC that is so divided that it's going to find it very difficult. He had his own challenges, but I strongly believe over the past 2 or at least less than a decade, he has been the best that South Africa could offer in terms of leadership. And his calm leadership, I think that's led us to the formation of this government of national unity, because there are very irrational leaders that sometimes we ask ourselves, but can they think rationally for the interest of their own party and for the interest of South Africans?
All right. Thank you so much, Professor, for your time. That was political analyst Professor Sethulego Matebesi, just weighing in there on the ANC's National Executive Committee meeting, its first sitting since the 29 May elections.